Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching COVID-19 India Fights Back. I'm Frank Rausen Pereira. A new study has revealed that the BCG vaccine, which is used to protect children from TB, can help in protecting people from coronavirus too. Dr. Renu Agarwal, Medical Superintendent of a COVID-19 hospital in Uttar Pradesh's Noida, has revealed that the BCG vaccine rapidly strengthens the body's immunity. The findings of the study are published in Indian Journal of Applied Research. Can BCG vaccine developed in 1921 to stop tuberculosis save lives from COVID-19 virus? This is a pertinent question which is asked worldwide and scientists are working on it. Scientists in the UK have already begun testing the BCG vaccine to see if it can save lives from COVID-19 virus. Now, the vaccine was designed to stop tuberculosis, but there is some evidence that it can protect against other infections as well. A single shot of BCG vaccine could resolve breathlessness and prevent severity in moderately ill COVID-19 patients, researchers of a trial by Hafkin Research Institute and BJ Medical College, Pune said. It is probably the first study on the use of the century-old vaccine typically given to children against tuberculosis as treatment for COVID-19, unlike trials that have studied BCG's role in prevention. In this edition of COVID-19 India Fights Back, we will analyze the effectiveness of the BCG vaccine in fighting COVID-19. Joining me on the program today are Dr. Rohit Sareen, member National Task Force for COVID-19, PVM Lakshmi, Professor of Epidemiology, Department of Community Medicine and School of Public Health, PGIMER, Chandigarh, and Professor N.K. Ganguly, former Director General, Indian Council of Medical Research. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of COVID-19 India Fights Back. Professor Ganguly, let me begin the program with you first. There's so much of information in the media of late, really, as far as the efficacy of BCG vaccine is concerned. So what is the connection really as far as the BCG vaccine is concerned, something that was developed almost 100 years ago, and COVID-19?
Actually, Mr. Pereira, the BCG has been used as one of the major innate immune booster, that it actually boosts up the innate immunity, which is one of the casualties of the COVID infection. However, when you use it in a very highly endemic area, one of the other functions which it should do is that it should reduce the inflammation, because the major death is because of the inflammation and aberrant immune responses. So when in the COVID you get dexamethasone, you bring down the immune responses, but you build up the inflammation. You bring down the inflammation and you also bring down the immunity. In BCG, you actually build up the immunity, but we do not know exactly how much does it brings down the inflammation. There is another mycobacteria which is known as the MW mycobacteria, where now in the matrix there is this is actually passed by DCGI for the septicemia, which is one of the things which happen. The same kind of things happen in the COVID infections. So in this, what has been found, that it was tested in about 85 subjects, and it was seen that it prevented death in the study group. It prevented death in that it has a 28% death in the study group, 80% death in the placebo group, and the discharge was also early in the study group, and the placebo group the discharge was late, and 90% became negative for RT-PCR within 18 days in the study group, whereas it only 78% became negative in the other group. The NNT was 2, as well as the odds ratio was very good. So this particular mycobacteria brings down inflammation drastically and also builds up immune responses, like both IFN gamma and beta interferon. Both of these are boosted up, and all the inflammatory markers, IL-6, etc., IL-17, etc., are handled very efficiently. So mycobacteria have an innate ability to work on that. BCG has been used in Israel for the preventive, because they had got two groups. One was a positive group, the other was a negative group. When the analysis was done, this analysis was not very significant. However, I have, with a great interest, I have studied this particular data which has emerged from the BJ Medical College. This is, I think, a preliminary data, and the numbers are at the moment little small, but I think they should continue this and expand the study and see that what happens. BCG has been used in the treatment of cancers, particularly the bladder cancer.
Right.
BCG has also been used in the tuberculosis, and it has been used in the leprosy. It has been used in the various kinds of things, particularly to boost up the immune responses, non-specific immune responses or innate immune responses.
Sure.
So I am very interested to see ultimately the culmination of this study which the BJ Medical College and their associates have done. But what they need to do, they need to build up the statistics little stronger, and they need to build up the numbers so that ultimately we are able to see the distinct effects.
Okay, points taken. All right. So, Dr. Sareen, there are several studies going on around the world, really, as far as the BCG vaccine is concerned, and its, and its impact or its effectiveness on COVID-19. So, are all these still in the experimental stages? Are the results or are the findings, positive and moving in the right direction? And can we expect something concrete, maybe in a few weeks or a few months?
I think we all are very hopeful, and especially as far as this particular organism is concerned, this virus is concerned, there are many candidates, vaccine candidates, which are being tried. And of them, BCG is one of them. And as Dr. Ganguly sir has already, explained the mechanism by which it is expected to act. And I would say that it's a non-specific immune booster, and in that immunoregulatory role it has, it also is expected to have some impact on whatever are the changes which are happening as a consequence of COVID-19 infection. We are very clear that, whenever there is COVID-19 infection, there are different stages. The initial stage is that of the virus multiplication. We call it stage of viremia. And this is followed by something which is inflammatory response. And if that inflammatory response is beyond a particular level, we say there is a cytokine storm. And I think most of the damage which is done in an individual is as a consequence of this own body's, inflammatory reaction or response to the COVID-19. So whatever you see in terms of the pneumonias, if you see in terms of saturation dropping, all that is really related to this inflammatory response. And then, of course, you see in the latter part of the illness, we are also having something like a thromboembolic phenomena. And these, thrombi in different organs of the body have their own responses. So what BCG does really is, it acts on the host or the body's immune system. There are two types of basic cells that we talk of, T cells and B cells. And this would be a stimulator for both. And it will really lead to antibodies generation. Now, these are non-specific antibodies, but they are sufficient to take care of the virus. So when the virus gets eliminated, then obviously the inflammation to the virus, which is generated as a response, that also reduces. And I would say that whatever limited data we do have right now, that is really stating that, well, the progression of disease from moderate to severe is, also prevented in a larger number of patients who received BCG than in those who did not receive BCG. Furthermore, you see now studies are also going on to see whether BCG it also has a protective role against the virus. And there is a large study of about 1,000 individuals being planned for testing this out in about 6 states in the country. And
Right.
the idea behind is that, okay, if an individual is given that vaccine, then are those individuals protected from getting the infection in the first place? So I would say that there are different approaches to the whole thing. But yes, BCG could be a very a good candidate, but only time will tell. We
Sure.
all live on hope, especially as this virus is concerned. I think very little can be said with certainty. But
Absolutely.
yes, whatever data that we do have, that is showing a positive direction.
Okay, Professor Lakshmi, let me bring you into the picture now. Initially, when the pandemic broke out in India, there were several people who suggested that, because Indians, as a whole have been given the BCG vaccine, so the COVID-19 virus or the SARS-CoV-2 virus has not been as deadly as it has been elsewhere in the world, say in Europe or in the West. So, do you believe that at some level the BCG vaccine has something to do with the death rates in India being below 1.5%? Is that in some way helped our immunity and thereby it has helped us fight the virus itself?
There are two things which I want to mention. Like one is there is some evidence, ecological studies have shown that wherever the BCG vaccine has uptake is high, or wherever BCG vaccination is being done, there the disease is less. But as whenever we are looking at ecological studies, we need to take into consideration there might be certain biases, which we call it as ecological fallacy, which might be there, the factors which we are not looking at the individual level. And again, like there is one more hypothesis which is being presented these days, especially regarding why the infection is low in India, apart from BCG vaccine, is the hygiene hypothesis, which has been doing the rounds, where they say that we are being exposed to so many microorganisms and that our immunity is high and our reaction to the allergens is a bit low. So both the things I think are playing a role, and only time will tell whether it is which way we are going.
Right, absolutely. These are two key aspects to consider and two key aspects to look into, really, that you have mentioned about. Of course, the hygiene hypothesis as well is an interesting one. Probably it can be taken up and discussed at some other occasion as well. So, Professor Ganguly, as far as the BCG vaccine is concerned, studies, scientists, doctors are looking at, typically two aspects. One is, of course, its role in prevention and its role in treatment of COVID-19. Where do you believe the success is going to be, in treatment or in prevention?
Actually, I will say more on the preventive aspect, because that is where BCG has been largely used. BCG has been also used for therapy, as I told you, in the bladder cancer. This is one of the US FDA approved therapy for the non-invasive bladder cancer. But essentially, BCG has been used worldwide for a preventive aspect of the thing. However, one of the myths I wanted to break, because there is a Ramanan's paper on the science which has come up, where although in India, the overall country, if you take, we have a very young population, our death rate is 1.5 or it is coming down. But the death rate between 45 and above, up to 65, our death rate is 18%. That is the highest in all the developed countries. So So we cannot really relate it to only that we were BCG vaccinated. So the hygiene hypothesis is another very important hypothesis, as Dr. Lakshmi has said, and also there could be other hypotheses, inherent hypothesis in us, that the Indians, our gut microbiota is very different than the Western microbiota, and gut microbiota actually influences huge number of our metabolic functions and inflammatory functions, because the probiotics actually, if we have a good healthy bacteria in our gut, it will bring down the inflammation. So there could be many factors on this, but these are all hypotheses at this given moment. BCG vaccination in tuberculosis in India, very large trial. It really didn't succeed that well. It was okay for miliary tuberculosis and tuberculosis meningitis in small children. But when you take the adult population, it didn't work that well. The tuberculosis was very rampant, endemic in our country. However, as far as the innate immune booster, as Dr. Sareen has said, that as an innate immune booster, it is very strong. So the innate immunity is one of the things which is hit by the COVID, because it hits first the gastrointestinal system, as the HIV/AIDS does, and gastrointestinal system is one of our most important immunity organ in our body. So this hits there. So anything which builds up the innate immunity to an appreciable level, it is of much use. So if I want to show you the exact difference over here, like take dexamethasone, which brings down the inflammation. It is being used in the severe cases. Now it is a standard of treatment. But dexamethasone doesn't boost interferons, which are the part of the innate immune system. The mycobacteria brings in particularly the MW variant, which I said, brings up the innate immune system, NK cell, which is also very important part of the innate immune system, and also brings down the inflammation. BCG's role in bringing down the inflammation at the moment is not very clear. It actually creates a delayed hypersensitivity in some of the subjects. So at the moment, we will learn that whether in the COVID cases where the inflammation is rampant, it does the immunomodulation. It is an immunomodulator also. It does the immunomodulation and brings it down. But at this given moment, we should take all the mycobacteria which are immunomodulator. And at this given moment, some of the important which are published data which is available for the therapeutic part of it, I'm not talking of the preventive part of it, the MW is much stronger mycobacteria to bring it down, and it is now published. The whole data is published and DCGI approved, gone through all the regulatory oversights over there. So I will end by saying that mycobacteria, some species of mycobacteria, which includes BCG, can really be an innate immune booster and worth trying with an appropriate placebo-controlled randomized trial to look at. Now we have a lot of such designs which are there. I hope we follow those designs so that when we have the data, this data will be important. And as the study which Dr. Sareen described, this is at the moment ongoing study, it will be very good to see that if you give a booster, a lot of our population has got BCG, if you give a booster of BCG, could it be preventive? Preventive will be perhaps much more successful with the BCG booster. So this will be something which since this is a very large study, we will be awaiting the results of this, and if it succeeds, it will be very good.
Okay, all right. So, Professor Ganguly, I know you have to be elsewhere. Thank you for joining us on the program and sharing your views as far as the BCG vaccine and its impact as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Thank you for joining me on the program. Let me take the discussion forward now with the other two panelists. Dr. Sareen, let's talk about the impact that BCG vaccine has had on other diseases, like Professor Ganguly was suggesting that it has been used in the past as well. So what have the results been? Have they been positive? And has the BCG vaccine been used to tackle some of the other coronaviruses that we've seen in the past?
BCG started off primarily as a vaccination against tuberculosis. That was the main role it was envisaged. And subsequently, it was realized that this particular vaccination, it brings about certain changes in the body, which lead to a generalized change in the immunity of the individual. And hence, you see, its role in other illnesses was also thought of. Like, we have now even considered this as therapy for certain types of cancers. So the idea here basically is that whatever changes happen in the human body, they act as a deterrent to the cancer cell. Now, whether BCG has been used for other coronaviruses or not, I mean, the role is not definite as on date. Even today, we are still, talking about research and more research. Initial results are favorable, that I have already indicated. But by and large, if we see, a lot of work needs to be done before this can be accepted as an option for protecting against coronavirus. And, its role even in the elderly has been explored. It is not because, elderlies form a particular group which are a high risk group for morbidity and mortality. As Professor Ganguly has said, that if we look at the mortality happening in the elderly group, in Indian subpopulations also, it is very high. And therefore, the role of BCG in this group has been studied separately. And it has been found that in individuals who were given this vaccine, their mortality was reduced. So, the role of this particular intervention is going to be very important, both in terms of preventing as well as in terms of a treatment option for those who have got the coronavirus.
Right.
And I will
say please go ahead.
That, the safety of this vaccine has been proven beyond doubt. We have been using this particular product for decades. So we know that, BCG as an intervention is otherwise safe. How much effect it has, that is experimental, but no one can doubt the safety. Whenever we think of any intervention, both these aspects become important. That is the product safe and is it effective? And I would say that in that context, BCG scores over many other vaccine candidates which are being tried. In fact, certain modifications of BCG, we call them recombinant BCG, and even other mycobacteria like MIP, which these are also being tried as immunomodulators. And who will win the race? No one knows. I mean, we heard in the news only today, and yesterday also it was in our scientific discussions that Pfizer has come out with a vaccine candidate which has a very good, response. But then long-term efficacy, whether it is there, how long will the protective effect last, all those things are still under question. We are not very clear.
Absolutely. It's just a waiting game for now. We'll have to wait and see how it goes and what really happens and what's the best way forward. Of course, talking about the best way forward, Professor Lakshmi, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on the best way forward.
Yeah, right now, BCG is being tried and we are looking at many trials, especially preventive they have not shown very much efficacious, but yes, some of the treatment modalities like as an immunomodulator, it is showing some promising evidence. So my concluding remark will be like we have to wait till the evidence gets accumulated, and the next few weeks to months are very crucial in this race against COVID.
Absolutely. Until that time, we actually find a cure, find a treatment, or find some kind of a preventive measure, we have to continue to follow the basic COVID appropriate behavior. With that, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of COVID-19 India Fights Back. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. As I leave, I'd like to make an appeal to all our viewers to ensure that you follow the basic protocols as far as fighting coronavirus is concerned. Remember to wear a mask at all times, wash your hands and face regularly, and of course, maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet as much as possible. Remember that these few steps can go a long way in defeating the coronavirus. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.